Welcome to the Big Movement Podcast. If you're ready to create results and make huge strides in your business, finances, personal development, and health, then you're in the right place. Pushing past excuses and powering through procrastination can be a challenge alone. Here, you'll get the support, tools, and knowledge you need to get to the level you desire in your business and life. Let's get started with your host, Byron Ingram.
And welcome to another episode of the Big Movement Podcast. Today, we have a special guest. We have Lucas Barra, who is a sales coach that empowers entrepreneurs and sales professionals to generate and close more sales. Because let's face it, everybody is in sales, and the more business that we close, the better it is for everybody. So let's give a warm welcome to Lucas. So Lucas, welcome.
Yeah, well, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show today, Byron.
Oh, you're welcome. So now, Lucas, tell us, how did you get started in sales? Because most people have some type of a background, how they got into it. It wasn't like, none of us were born out of the womb like, all right, I'm here to sell some people some stuff, so start lining up. So how did you get into sales?
It was actually an accident. So I originally wanted to be a sports agent, Byron, like Jerry Maguire style. I went to college, I went to Illinois for it. I graduated, and then I moved back to San Diego. And I got into the sports business because that was the field I wanted to pursue. And one of my friends owned a local business that helps aspiring collegiate athletes get recruited to play D1 through, D3, D2 sports, all that jazz. And eventually we reconnected after college, and he said, hey, I have this position, and we kind of just talked about it. And I ended up just kind of getting thrown in it, and ultimately it was sort of like a sales admin, kind of just entry-level sales position. And so it's kind of just float or sink, and it's kind of how it's been my whole career. And ended up doing it for a little while, and then shortly thereafter, I figured out that the sports agent route really wasn't for me anymore. I mean, I had a conversation with a pretty high-powered agent that made me realize that I wasn't really interested in babysitting athletes and kind of their careers. So I kind of stuck with it, and then I realized over time that I was really starting to enjoy sales. So that's how I ended up just sticking with it.
Okay. That's an interesting way that you came about it, because so many people, they have this stigma about sales, or they're not sure what they want to do. Or in your case, you had this idea, this vision. Oh, you want to be that Jerry Maguire out there. But once you got into it, oh, this is different. Because you think about how many people are in a situation just like that. They're doing something like, this is not what I thought it was all that cracked up to be.
Yeah, well, it's such an important thing, because I think that's just part of the process, right? Like, if you don't know, I was just talking to one of my clients about this today, where you got to try, otherwise you don't know. It's like, if you want to make 50 more cold calls, and that's going to be a new thing for you, unless you try, it's not going to make the difference. So for me, it was just part of the exploratory process until I started to kind of get closer to what I really wanted to do long term.
Right. So then how did you get into the true sales position after you got your start in the sports arena?
Yeah, so I started to succeed pretty quickly because in the sports and sales really go hand in hand. I mean, in college and kind of just after with my internship, I was selling whether I knew it or not, always out building relationships with people, hustling to build social media in person, and so forth. So I kind of had it. It just was a matter of applying it in a structured place. So once I started to apply it, I started to succeed in my role, and then my a company that I used to work for found me and recruited me to be in more of a full-time sales position for my success in the sports job. And so then that's where I really jumped into my first full-time sales gig, and I just kept on going up the levels at this company, from kind of entry-level sales to more of a business development position. And eventually I was part of over 1,000 plus closed sales at the company. And then I just got to a point where I really was getting to talk to all these successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, and hearing all these amazing things, and we just live in this really cool time. And I just was like, well, you know what? I kind of want to do something a little bit more with my life. I feel like I have more potential than this. So eventually I got to a point where I started a podcast business on the side of my job, where I bought people who are chasing their dreams like you and I and a lot of the people in the audience on my show to share insights, advice, and inspire people to keep chasing their dreams, because you know how tough that is. And so eventually I got to a point where I needed some help growing my podcast. So I hired a podcast coach, and that was an awesome experience. And literally within the first 2 or 3 sessions, I went like, wow, you know what? I really like this kind of whole coaching dynamic. And I just felt innately within me, Byron, that I had a gift with actually being able to coach people. So I started doing the coaching and the podcast while I was working my job. And eventually I got to a point where I realized that I kind of had to pick a direction as far as what I was going to do in my business, because running a podcast is a full-time gig in itself. And I had a job. It was like I was doing 3 things at once. I was running around like chicken with its head cut off. And so I was like, I felt more called to the coaching. I'd done coaching. So I just jumped and said, you know what, I'm just gonna kind of shift my brand. And I've been in the process of this exciting journey of growing my own sales coaching business. From there, after I saw some results with I had some initial clients that I worked with for free. I helped them and kind of just, put it on from there. Started having people pay an investment to work for me, and, it just has developed as it's gone.
Oh, excellent. And it's an incredible journey because of how you discovered where that passion is of helping people with sales, because you have that dynamic background to close so many sales that you were able to see the patterns of what worked, what didn't work, and how many people who they go into being an entrepreneur, into sales, and they're thrown into the deep end like, well, just go sell it. And that's about the extent of their training.
Yeah, man. And I think that's why it's so important that one of the first dynamics of selling more successfully is coming from a place of actually helping people, right? I mean, within the first minute you talk to someone, you can really tell whether they're in it for you or not. So for anyone in this audience who has to sell, like, you have to really, I do this before every call. I think about my mindset. I'll always say to myself, I'm calling this person so they can understand the value that I can provide for them, and helping them to understand if there's something that I can do for them. And then if there's something that potentially there's a fit for us to work together, then great. If not, that's okay too. And that's such an important mind, because there's kind of a dynamic where I've had plenty of salespeople, entrepreneurs approach me from a standpoint of here's here's my background, here's this and that. Like, I don't really care about that. Like, it's good when we're, closing the deal, and I want to know that you kind of have the record to back it up. But in the beginning, it's all about, how can you help me? Because that's how you really start to stand out from the crowd.
Right, exactly. It makes a world of a difference when the focus is on you instead. Because you think about how many people, it's the me show, where it's more of bragging. And like you said, people don't care. They want to know at the end of the day, how can you help them, not you necessarily just showing off all your trophies.
Yeah. And I think more importantly, it's also about creating a structure for people in an environment where they feel like they can share. Because if you really want to have a successful sales conversation, consultation, you need to create a place where someone can actually share what's going to allow you to actually help them. Because if they feel like they're being sold to, they're not going to give you a whole lot. And if you're really going to help someone, you need to be able to build rapport, trust, because once they feel like they can trust you and you're really demonstrating that you're in it for them, they're going to really share what their actual challenge is. And ultimately, that's where you see if you can help them, because that's another part of this dynamic is, regardless of whether someone's your target clientele or not, you don't really know if you can help someone, because a common mistake that a lot of people make in a consultation call, or even in just we'll talk about an interview. I mean, because I was a podcaster too, is you ask a question of someone and you think you found what their challenge or opportunity is. And in reality, that's just the surface level, and asking the questions to really understand what the real issue is. Because so much of the time I work with people and hear this, that you try to solve an issue that isn't necessarily the issue, and you miss out on what you could really be helping them with, or what someone could be helping them with.
Right. And that's so critical, because people like to go for the quick win instead of diving deep and figuring out what is that true cause of it. Because once you figure that out, it becomes substantially easier. Because the average person's going to stop at that first thing they say, like, "Oh yeah, we can fix that," but that's not the true problem.
Yeah, well, and it's challenging because a lot of our society and kind of just the way that people are taught to sell and even get things in general, it's instant gratification, right? And so much of it's a mindset shift. I mean, for some people in the audience, this could be a big deal for them, because once you understand that it's not about like an instant sale, it's about really understanding whether this person has a problem that you can solve, then you're able to relax a little bit more. And people always say, well, I need to sell my product. I'm in the deep end. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a salesperson who makes my quota. Well, that's why you gotta have a lot of conversations. That's why you always gotta have your foot on the gas. And I know it's hard, especially in the early going when you're really trying to get things going, or you're super busy, but you have to constantly check in. And this is why I always share with my clients about pre-call routines, about the fact that you're not coming from scarcity. Even if you need that money so badly, you have to remind yourself that that's why you have the call, is so that when you come off to someone, it's not like you need their business. And people can get that and are more attracted to actually work with you, so that when you have a full-on conversation with someone, you can really get to the bottom of it and solve it. And if you really can't solve it, people are going to respect you for that. And even if you say, well, I don't know if this is necessarily going to help you, they may have more of an interest in working with you anyways, because you're not like any other salesperson that is trying to just sell them anything.
Right. And that's critical, because the scarcity mindset, when people are hungry, especially in the beginning, it can be damaging. So besides just that mindset, what are some of the other ways people can get past it, especially in the early stages, so they're not in that panic state of, if I don't close this deal, I'm not eating?
Well, you got to take more action. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to, is you have to put yourself in a position, whether, let's talk for salespeople who are actually inside, and then people who are kind of able to do their own thing, is that you have to either make more phone calls or make more coffee meetings or do more of these things, because when you have action starting to pile up, you're going to start to feel more comfortable, because you're going to say, I have consultations with Jimmy, Joe, Gene, and John next week, and you start to realize that, like, okay, I have potential opportunities, I have referral meetings that I'm taking. And you start to realize that, like, hey, regardless of the opportunities that come out of this, if I have this kind of activity level, then I'm going to start to see some results. And then it's also understanding, like, are people really understanding your value proposition? Because especially in the beginning, or any sort of sales interaction, when you are getting objections, if you don't understand when someone's, I don't have the time for your product, or this isn't interesting to me, to really understand why that is. Like, one of the things I always tell people I work with is, when someone says that they're not interested in working with you, ask them why. Like, would just say, hey, like, regardless, if you've finally gotten to the point where you realize this is just not going to work, they're not budging, just say, hey, I'm just curious. I just want to know, like, what is it about how I presented this to you that made you not interested? Or what is it about, where you're at that makes you not interested? Because you're going to get some valuable feedback. And getting feedback is so important at any stage in the game. And I say, practice your presentation too. Like practice your family, practice if you have friends who can support you in enhancing that. Because along with the mindset, if you have the activity and then the practice to feel like because it's about getting better constantly. And when you get better constantly, you're eventually going to start to fix some of the little problems that you have so that you're not as worried, and you'll start to feel more confident that you can actually feed yourself because of that activity and practice that you have. So if you're already making 20 phone calls, make 30 phone calls. If you're having 5 consultations, do 10, because that's where you're going to have more confidence that you can actually close some more deals.
Right, definitely. It's the act of doing it, because we live in that world where I think so many people, they get stuck in a constant learning mode where they want to know more and more and more, but at some point you have to step up and do it. It's that expression. You can read a book about riding a bike all day long, but until you ride a bike, you just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you need people in your corner who are going to hold you accountable. I mean, whether it's a coach, friends, mentors, whatever, because the minute that you start to get in action out there more, you're so in your own world that you don't know what's really going well, what's really happening as well as you could. And to kind of have someone from the outside guiding you, and really, kind of checking you and saying, hey, like, are you really doing what you say you're going to do? Because you can look yourself in the face and say, I've made 30 calls today. But if your friend comes in and says, how did your day go? And you give some, not so great response, that there's something out of alignment there. So a lot of the action is also doing what you say you're going to do, and to have people in your life who can help you to do that and have the proper mindset of saying that I have to do what I say I want to do. Otherwise, I'm never going to get what I want.
Right, and that's important because accountability, it keeps you on track, because everybody has those days where you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. But knowing that you have to tell somebody that you did or did not do it changes everything. Yeah,
and I think also more so than just telling someone, which is an important step, it's being willing to have a conversation to explore what you're missing. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to hire a coach, or it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to go find a mentor. It's about being open to the fact that there's more to the equation that you're just not aware of. That's such a big, because none of us know everything. And until we're open to that, then you really can't figure out what's holding you back, and you need to be able to get on the other side of that to really succeed.
Right, exactly. Now, obviously, to be successful in sales, people are, they need to be making phone calls, they need to be having more meetings, and a sticking point that some people have is, the rejection. How should people look at rejection, and ultimately, how do they get past it? Because it's something that can paralyze people when they hear someone say no, or you think about that person who's just getting started and they've just heard this long string of no's and they feel defeated.
Yeah, well, that's a great conversation topic, because I think it's like going to the gym. It's a muscle that you build over time. We see all these things on the internet now, and everyone get over rejection instantly, or take this magic pill, or use this magical, LinkedIn software, and you don't have to cold call anymore. And that doesn't work. And the reality is that it takes time. Like when you start out in sales, or even when you were a trained salesperson, like no one likes getting rejected. Rejection sucks. Like you're going to get hung up on. You're going to have people who you thought would be good customers now want to work with you. You have friends who are not going to call you back. So it's about having the proper mindset, one, in place to understand that you're going to get rejected, and that's okay. Like that's part of the process. If you don't get rejected, you are not trying hard enough. And then to also reframe that word, because rejection in itself, we've created this, how you verb things is so important, and to reframe that in a way to say that that's a learning experience because you have to be rejected, quote unquote, to really understand where you need to improve. And it's never going to get any easier at any time to make any call, whether it's your level of experience that you feel you don't have, it's the money you don't have. None of that is going to change until you get out there and actually start feeling it. And I think, when you're on a call with someone, we all feel like when someone says no to you, there's kind of a gut check that you feel. That's normal too. And I think a lot of people, especially if you've never done high volume sales, are like, well, is there something wrong with me? Like, I'm not built for this. When in reality, it's like, no, like this is just part of the process. And then there's the numbers game too. It's just like when people start making high volume, they may convert one person out of 20, and then all of a sudden they think they're not right for the field. No, that's just how it goes. Like, sales is a lot like baseball for anyone who watches, where if you have like a 300 average, that's great. So a lot of it is understanding that regardless of how good you are, you're going to get rejected a lot, and that's okay. That's a big part of it. And I think, when you're looking at like, okay, so there's this mindset I have to take on of rejection is normal, and then how you actually apply that to your conversations is keep tracking your no's. This is something that I do to encourage me, because I used to struggle with that rejection as well. And then I kept saying, I was like, you know what? For every no that I get, I know I'm getting that much closer to yes. So I have a gong, Byron, literally sitting in my office, and I bang that gong whenever I get a no, and I celebrate the no. So, and this is about creating a habit, right? Because getting over rejection has to be a habit that you instill in you, because over time you start to get better at dealing with it. And so now that I have that habit, I don't always have to bang the gong, but I bang the gong to celebrate the no. So for you guys out there, think about something that you can do to celebrate when you get a no. Play some music. Be like, yes, I got a no. Like, this is just getting me that much closer to getting my next yes, because you need to have no's. And when someone says no to you in a call, that's great. Like, you want someone to say no. I think it's great because, especially in a sales conversation, sometimes you can be in trouble if someone's not saying no to you right away, because that means that there's going to be an objection at some point in the conversation for about 95% of sales. I mean, there's going to be people who end up being dream clients who you're just able to close and really don't have an objection. But at some point, you're going to have to manage that. So it's better to deal with that stuff up front, because once you can get around that, that's usually where the issues are at. Like, the issues, there are plenty of issues in that objection. I don't have time. I don't have the money that you could actually help them with if you can just stick with it and go with it for long enough. So to recap for everyone, it's about changing your mindset that rejection is normal. It's part of the process. Everyone experiences. Everyone has that heavy feeling. You just got to do it. You'll get better over time, and then start to celebrate your no's and increase that action so that over time that you're able to start to cope with that. And then eventually, the keyword here is eventually, you'll start to enjoy that no, because you're going to struggle to deal with objections at first. If you're not having sold a lot, you'll struggle with it anyways. I mean, everyone does to some degree. And it's just, you learn to manage it, and over time, if you're reasonable about it, you get better. And it's a long-term game. I mean, that's the so important part of this is you got to be in for the long-term game, because that's what helps you manage everything better.
Right. Oh, definitely. And like you said, it's a part of the process that if you're not getting no's, you're not trying, you're not talking to enough people, because we all have to go through that. And yeah, it sucks in the beginning because who wants rejection? But you learn that it's part of the game and to accept it, plain and simple. So now, obviously, people need to talk to more people at the end of the day to get those no's. What have you seen work as, when you look at your sales career as things have evolved, where, before, let's say, just hitting the phones constantly to having coffee meetings, and now you have social media that's a big, heavy part of the process. What do you see that people should be doing so they can keep their calendar full with prospecting?
Well, I just think there's so many unique opportunities if you're in a position where you're basically able to just do whatever you want. I mean, with social media now, you can take a video of yourself adding value to others about the real estate market, or even just having a fun conversation to get your name out there and maybe add some other value points. So, I mean, there are ways to sell outside the phone now, which are great. I mean, LinkedIn, you can write blog articles. You can become more of a brand, if you will, because people start to follow you when you post consistently. You can do a Facebook group and really get people to know who you are. I mean, I was just talking to one of my buddies this morning. He's like, I see your face everywhere. That's what you want. You want people to see you everywhere, not just on the phone. At the end of the day, I believe that those things aren't going to cure it, though, because they're kind of like the toppings, right? But you still need the bread, and the bread is the phone calls that you have to make and the meetings that you got to do. So in some regards, the only way that you can really be outside that traditional model is to just say, to take advantage of all the opportunities for the channels and to start just putting in more work and having more activity, because your calendar is only going to show as much work as you put in. So if you aren't putting in a lot of calls, you're not going to be very busy. So you got to get busy so that activity bumps up. I mean, there's really no way around it. I mean, if you really want to, I mean, in this day and age, if you are really trying to be a coach or an entrepreneur and you have to sell a service or a product, you can't get around the fact that you have to actually pick up the phone and call someone. I mean, in some regards, with some products, it can be harder to find out who your niche market is and really make phone calls. And I would say to you, start calling people who you think may be close. Start going to coffee with people who may not be necessarily in your niche and learning more, because what's going to happen is you're going to start to refine what that target audience looks like, because once you know who that target audience is, then you can start to be more strategic about how you reach out and you say, all right, this person's on LinkedIn. I'm going to call them. I'm going to send them a LinkedIn message. I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn because I think LinkedIn gives you – I use it all the time for prospecting because I can very easily pick out who my target clienteles are. I'll call them. I can do some research. They tell me about what their interests are, so I can build rapport with them. So, for anyone out there who's not utilizing LinkedIn right now, there's a freaking gold mine for you on that platform.
Oh, excellent. So, obviously, you can use LinkedIn for prospecting. What are some of your favorite ways to use it? Because some people, they've just been on Facebook having a great time, and they look at LinkedIn like, it's stuffy, it's boring. How did they start making that switch to realize it's time to roll up your sleeves, grab the pickaxe, and get to mining some gold on LinkedIn?
Yeah, well, I think first you got to ask yourself the question: how committed are you to success? Because that's what it's going to take. Because it's a different avenue, and like anything, you're going to have to put the time in to actually understand the platform. Like if you know someone, I would consider myself a LinkedIn expert. If you know someone in your network, whether it's me or not, to talk to them and understand how to utilize that platform, that can save you a lot of time. If you don't have that, though, to just start looking around the platform, understanding how it works, spending some time, because there are all these cool features. Like you can narrow down, like for example, if I want to find out, people who are sales representatives in San Diego, I can do that on LinkedIn, or people who are entrepreneurs in San Diego. I can narrow that down, and then I can see, once that they're going to show me all the people who are connected to that person. So I could say, here's John Doe, and he's a business development representative at this company, and he's connected to my friend Byron Ingram. So then that gives me a very easy transition to make a phone call to someone where I just say, hey, John Doe, I saw that you're connected with my friend Byron Ingram, who is a successful entrepreneur. And since I know he's a success-minded person, I thought you might be the same way and wanted to share with you, how I could be of value to you. So LinkedIn gives you a lot of easy ways to talk about scripting in sales and kind of a way to kind of introduce yourself. Gives you a lot of opportunities where you can actually see how someone's connected to you. You can see their interests. Hey, maybe you went to the same college. Hey, John, I went to the University of Illinois like you and was calling because, it gives you so much more information that you can utilize. And then from there, most companies that you're going to call on, if you are actually just doing B2B, are going to have business numbers that you can call. You can call people at work, and you will, I promise you, may seem a little outside the box. Outside the box is what has you win. And people will be like, oh, you're calling me at work. Well, yeah, I'm calling you at work because I know how valuable this could be for you. So that's a way to distinguish it. And even if they're an entrepreneur and they don't have a number that you can call them at, LinkedIn allows you to actually message that person. I would highly, highly recommend that you make the investment to do LinkedIn Premium because you can actually message someone how you can be of value to them, even if you're not quote unquote like friends. Friends is like the same thing as a connection on Facebook, right? So I could message Byron if he's not my friend and say, hey, Byron, here's how I can be of value to you. And I'd like to learn more about what you're looking to accomplish and see if it would make sense for us to talk further. How does next Tuesday or Wednesday talk? So you're able to shorten that talk cycle. So if you're not able to even get them on the phone, they may be able to respond to a message, or maybe you connect with them and you have the opportunity to connect with someone. There's a message feature that says, I'd like to add you to my professional network. Scratch that. Like, put something that's more personalized to them. Like, I saw that you're a podcaster and I want to connect so you can learn how I can add value to your audience and help you to grow your audience. You're really saying something personalized because that will help you to stand out. So there's so many personalizable elements that you can utilize on LinkedIn. I mean, a lot of people are just going to straight up put their emails and phone numbers. And more importantly, people want to be helped with their problems and challenges, even if they don't know that they have them yet. So don't feel like you're a nuisance or salesy for reaching out, because sales is about helping people to achieve what they didn't know was possible, or to help them to solve something that they just, like they don't have enough time in the day to structure making sales calls. That you can provide that. You just have to switch that mindset and understand there's a learning curve for LinkedIn too. So it's totally worth the investment of your time to that platform and to do the actions that you can take.
And that right there, that is so valuable, because it's like we were talking about, it's a gold mine that people are not tapping into, because people are on there with that business mindset that they're wanting to share what they're doing with people, and ultimately they're going to be more open about somebody approaching them. Versus you look at Facebook, people are there to be entertained, to interact with their friends, not necessarily to be sold to.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes a huge difference when you can spend your time putting your energy towards the connections that lead to something. Whether it's you have a business and you're doing the B2B sales, and you're prospecting that way. They want to talk to you, because at the end of the day, you think about it, it doesn't matter what line of business it is, that if you can pick up the phone and talk to someone and say, hey, I can add 10% to your bottom line with my product, you're going to have their attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I can't think of anybody who say, no, I don't want to add 10% more to my bottom line. It just would not happen.
Right. Or like, who doesn't want to be more successful? I mean, usually if you got a person who's really successful and they're like, I'm already successful. Well, how'd you like to be more successful?
Right.
Well, that's good. I mean, usually if they're not, they're not probably your right type of client if they don't want to be more successful anyways. So that's their loss.
Right. If someone said, nope, I'm pretty good. All right. Well, that would be interesting to see. But for the most part, I think you're right there. People are going to want to say, I want to be more successful at blank, whatever it is. It doesn't matter the type of industry. People want to be a little bit more successful at it. So obviously with sales and everything else you have going on, what is it that you're doing in your business right now that you find the most effective? Because, there's a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs who are listening that you're doing to attract the clients that you want to work with. What have you found to be most effective right now?
Getting on that phone, using LinkedIn. I literally, before we hopped on the phone here, I made three cold calls about 10 or 15 minutes ago, and I got consultation with a potential client here on Thursday out of it. I got a coffee meeting with someone who could potentially be a client for me, or we're just going to help refer each other because we're in a similar space. Also got another meeting set up with someone about potentially speaking at their school because they're part of the UCS, University of California, San Diego system out here, and there's some ways that I could help them. And those are all cold connections that I made today from LinkedIn, and LinkedIn reminded me that there were some people that I had to follow up with. So for me, really, like that is exactly what I'm using right now in my business. I think is making the biggest difference for me right now, and just making the outreach to these people at their businesses. And then, for all the entrepreneurs out there, is just, setting meetings with people who, they may not necessarily be your target clientele, but they're close enough where you may be able to help each other to get more business. And, like a referral partner is a big deal. If you structure that right and you really put some potential, they can get like $700 for a referral, and you start to get things going. Hey, like that can really, really work well if you structure that, but you got to spend the time there. So LinkedIn has created all that opportunity for me to do that. And there's even more that I haven't been able to capitalize on, just in terms of writing a blog, building my brand out more consistently. So I see that as really being a game changer.
Right. Oh, definitely. You have to, it goes back down to being everywhere, but then focusing in on what's going to generate you the most results, because it's building upon it, leveraging, having a team of people do those things so they can help you go deeper every which way possible, so you can maximize the possibility for generating sales and closing deals.
Yeah, well, and I think more importantly, I'm sure there are people out there who are listening and saying, well, sales is my strength. Well, I get that, and more importantly, you have to take out the opportunity and say, you know what, I got to improve at it, even if I'm not going to do it long term. Like if you're a marketing guy and you want to run a marketing business, you got to at least learn how to sell, so that when you bring someone else on as an employee, that they can learn, how to sell that product. Because if you don't know how to sell that product, that's going to hurt you long run. I promise you, there's no way that if you don't know how to sell that product, that you can hope to run a successful business.
Right. Oh, definitely. And when you think about sales, at the end of the day, it's no different than, let's say, if you're to look at an Olympic athlete. No matter where they are, if they won a gold medal, at one point they started at the very beginning. Let's use Michael Phelps as an example. If you're to turn back the clock, there's at one point where it's like, how the heck do I get from this side of the pool to the other one? Right. Everybody starts the exact same way, and it's a learned skill that you train and you get better at with each time you do it.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it has to do with the commitment factor. It's kind of tricky, right? Because the word commitment and the way that we commit to things, I think, are a little off kilter. Because when you try something and you say something like, I'm going to try a sales career, you're screwing yourself over. Because if it's not working out in the next year or two, you're already losing out because you weren't committed. And this goes for entrepreneurship as well. If you're not fully committed, like there comes a point in time where you very easily in your first year you could say you're not a salesperson as an entrepreneur, and that could be absolute crap. It could mean that it's not your strong suit, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, you have to put the time in to get better at it, and over time, unless you commit to it and run at it, you're never going to know. Like you have to make the decision. Even if you're not sure if that sales career is something you want long term, until you give it 120%, you're never going to know. And I ask you, are you really giving sales in your business or your career 120%? And I get it. Like, hey, you don't know if it's going to be right for you. But the only way you're going to know if it's right for you is if you give it your all and you consistently grow at it. You'll get to a point where either you're going to succeed or you're just going to realize that, you know what, this really isn't meant for me. And you've truly failed. There's a difference between failing and truly failing. When you've truly failed at something, you've exhausted all the options. You've actually tried to get better. And usually people with that sort of approach are going to figure it out, or at the end of the day, you know what, it wasn't the right for you, but you figured it out, and that's okay, because at least you really tried.
Right. And that is so critical, because people don't necessarily give it their all. They're trying because they put their feet in the water and realize, oh, this is hard, that's difficult. Well, of course it is. It's something new. No one just suddenly does something that's a new skill and they're a pro at it. Like, we all go through that awkward phase. Like, you know, I like to say it's like watching let's take a giraffe or something taking its first steps. It is the most awkward looking thing in the world, but it figures it out really fast and starts running. And we have to do the same thing in sales.
Exactly.
You know, it's just pushing ourselves out there. So, as we wrap things up, what's a great resource for people when they want to start diving into sales that they should be looking at?
Well, I think first I have a great resource that I've put together for entrepreneurs and sales professionals out there on the three crucial insights that they need to be generating more sales. It's very crisp and short for people on how you can learn some immediate things that you can put into action to help you to make more sales. And then just in terms of resources, I think experience is a great resource. And I also believe that your colleagues are a great resource, whether you're in your industry or you're not, to learn more about what their pains are, to learn more about where they could see you potentially being of value to them in the future, whether it's as a client or not. And then some good books to really dive into. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill is really helpful for getting your mindset right. 10X by Grant Cardone is a great resource as well. And I've got some videos and other great resources that people can check out that can help them to make more sales. LinkedIn has a lot of great resources from blogs to videos. Facebook. I mean, there's a lot of information out there, and I think once you really want it and are ready to start actually implementing it, then that's where it's going to make the biggest difference for you.
Oh, that is awesome. So now, how can people reach out to you so they can get those insights that you mentioned, as well as learn more about you and see how you can help them make more sales?
Yeah. Well, my website is www.radical, like RADICAL, salescoaching.com. Again, it's www.radicalsalescoaching.com. And they can also email me, Lucas, LUCAS, at radical, RADICAL, salescoaching, all one word, .com. And I can see what value I can add to them, maybe direct them towards some resources. I don't have them to people who they can get them from, and that would be the best way to connect with me. And then also on Facebook as well, we have a great community called the Radical Sales Community, which is full of successful sales professionals and entrepreneurs who are collaborating, sharing insights, and we're really using that as an opportunity to get you to make more sales and grow your business. So I can share a link for that too, Byron.
Oh, definitely, because people love to interact and share those wins, because sometimes people are in a slump and they see someone sharing success, like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. So that would be very powerful for people.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank you for coming onto the Big Movement podcast today and sharing all these insights, because they're great tips and things that people should be using every single day to create success in sales. Yeah, well, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for listening to the Big Movement Podcast today. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now that you've surely been inspired to take your entrepreneurial career and business to the next level, you can stop by the website and get more. And if you're ready to boost your business brand, be sure to grab your free report, 7 Easy Steps to Build Your Brand Today.